Welcome back to the Languages Pedagogy Podcast, Part 2 of Career Transitions for Teachers. Finding Your Next Step with Mike Leaman. In Part 1, we uncover the spark, the emotional shift that starts it all. Now, in Part 2, we explore what happens after you say goodbye to the classroom. Mike and I open up about the fear of losing your identity, the grief that often goes unnamed, and the beautiful, yet messy, process of discovering who you are outside of the teacher label. We talk about skills that go beyond the whiteboard, rebuilding your self belief, and the many surprising places former teachers are now thriving. This episode is a roadmap for everyone, for anyone feeling stuck, uncertain, or quietly asking, what's next? So again, grab your cup of coffee, sit comfortably, and let's dive in. So much information actually. I got no more pages to write down here. But yeah, really cool, really amazing. I'm really glad actually to hear you just talking about this. Because some of the points that you're actually mentioning right now, those are points that the teachers, that part of the listeners have been actually asking me. And I'm like, let me give you my perspective, but you are
Yeah.
actually the right person just to say it. So I'm like, okay, here you are. There's your answer. Now, moving on a little bit to the segment 4, confidence after the classroom, rebuilding
Mm.
self-belief. So, what were some internal narratives you had to rewrite as you transitioned?
I think the biggest thing is you worry about that kind of fear and that kind of confidence side of things. So you worry, like we spoke about already, like what am I doing? But and then linked to that is like I'm only a teacher. That idea of like I'm only a teacher. I'm a qualified teacher. I've got
Only.
paperwork, that shows that I'm a teacher. That's my identity. That's who I am. Like that's my job. But like we've already discussed, there's all these skills, there's all this kind of stuff that you can transfer into other careers, but you've still got that label as teacher, and you've got to break free of that label first before you can convince someone else that you're not a teacher anymore. You can say, I've got a teaching background, I've got a background in teaching, my experience to date has been mainly in teaching. You can use that kind of language, but if you keep talking in like a teacher voice or teacher way, then they're going to see you as a teacher. If you keep
Yeah.
talking about children and the classroom and like lessons and things like that, and your subject or discipline or whatever, and you're in an interview about, a business or a corporation, they're going to be like, this guy, he's not
He's a
talking our
teacher.
language.
Yeah,
He's a
yeah,
teacher.
exactly.
Why is he here? He should
Exactly.
be teaching. So you've got to believe that you're more than a teacher before anyone else is going to believe that. Because if you don't believe it, there's no way that they're going to believe it. Um, and that's difficult to do. But you've got to really do that work on skills. You've got to speak to
Hmm.
people. You've got to network. You've got to
Rebuilding everything from zero, just
yeah,
checking over here, checking over there. I mean, trying to learn, study a little bit. It demands
yeah,
a lot of willpower as well. I mean, if you want to actually do this transition, you gotta actually just come from it, right? I
yeah.
mean, come from
You've
it
got you.
from
Yeah.
yourself and start like doing and checking and do it.
Yeah, you've got to make it your like top priority. If you're genuinely
Mm,
going to leave, you've got to make it your priority because, I speak to like a lot of people. I've worked with hundreds of teachers, and some people start and they're like, oh, I really want to change jobs, but the job's so busy. I don't have time. I don't have time to do my CV, my resume. I just, where am I going to find the time? And they can't find the time because the job is taking too much of their time. But you've got to make the job search, the career
yes,
change, your number one priority. Otherwise, you're never going to leave. You know?
exactly.
Yeah. And who cares if they say to you, "Oh, you're not marking these books, or you're not, your lessons aren't as good as they once were." Who cares? You're leaving anyway. You're going to
Exactly.
leave. You know,
Exactly.
you know, yeah,
So this is one of the things that happen, and yeah, but what happens with the imposter syndrome?
mm, mm,
Because this is another problem actually that can be faced once you start like moving on to another career.
yeah,
there's
Yeah.
gonna be a moment that maybe you're gonna be like, hold on, is this me? Isn't that me? No, no, no. What am I doing here? Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I think imposter syndrome is really interesting because I think all of us kind of like feel that sometimes. I think we've all got this, even if when you're in teaching and like maybe you've been a teacher for all your life and then you're like now the head of the department or the faculty or whatever, you can sometimes be like, oh, what am I doing? I was just a teacher, so like the only way you're never going to get imposter syndrome is if you do the same job for your entire life. If you do the same job in the same place for your entire life, then you probably won't get imposter syndrome. But it's not really much of a life, is it? To sort of just stay in the same thing for like 30, 40 years. So it does happen, but you've got to remind yourself of your value, like what you bring, and
Exactly.
and say like, yes, I have a teaching background, but that makes me a stronger candidate because if you're applying to, I don't know, like a business or a charity or a government organization or whatever, there's going to be loads of people who've only ever done those kind of jobs. But
Yes.
you bring in a different skill set and a different perspective that makes you a stronger candidate in a lot of ways because you see it from a different lens than they see it, and you're bringing in a whole different set of skills and experiences and background that could be what they really need. If the business or organization only hires one type of person, then it
Yes.
really stops listening to the rest of the world and only kind of like, just get loads of people who just nod their head and say yes all the time. It's not good for a business. It's not good for innovation, diversity. You've got to bring in, there's diversity in terms of like people from different backgrounds and beliefs and faiths and all that sort of stuff. But then there's also this term which I really like, diversity of thought. You want people who think in different ways and people who bring different perspectives. Like that is
Yes,
also a kind of
exactly.
diversity as well. Yeah.
Exactly. That's one of the points. That's a good one. So then you have to actually work a lot in confidence.
Mm,
What
mm.
about the how's it called? The introverts
Yeah.
or the extroverts? That's another point there, right? So
Mm.
you gotta work a lot in confidence just to make them feel like, okay, you can do it, right? Be
Yeah.
confident on
Yeah.
what you know. I mean, yes, you're a teacher, that's true, but that doesn't mean you cannot actually do this other job. You cannot do
Yeah.
this. For sure you can.
Yeah.
Creativity, like you said at the beginning. So in this point, what's one mindset shift that changed everything for you?
Ooh, that's a good question. Mindset shift that changed everything for me. I
Yeah.
think it's that idea that you're not just the teacher and you have huge value. You have
Mhm.
huge value. Um, and I think once you recognize that you've got value beyond the classroom, and that you've got all this untapped value. You've got skills that you use in teaching, but you're only using them like, maybe once or twice a day, things that you're doing, but you're not really thinking about. That's untapped value, like things that, you could be the thing that you're best at, but you're being kind of trapped by the school environment, the teaching environment. You're not allowed to flourish and sort of develop. So for me, like I said, that creativity, that writing, that sort of that headspace, that was being kind of like crushed a bit by teaching because I didn't have the time, the energy to let my brain wander like that. So knowing your value and knowing that yes, it might be a hard journey, but it's totally worth it in my perspective, in my
Mhm.
opinion. So yeah.
And I agree with you because I actually feel it. I didn't have actually a coach. Maybe if you would have I would have met you before, I would have actually done even better. But definitely, I mean, this is something that I've been doing, and I think no, this is something that is really worth doing it
Mm.
because
Yeah.
nobody's gonna value actually here more than you.
Yeah.
So you gotta
Yeah.
recognize who you are, motivate yourself. If you don't motivate yourself, don't expect someone else just to come to you and say, "Hey, you know what? You can do it. You can do it. You can." What about that person is not there anymore? Come on, no,
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah.
Mindset, right?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. You've got to be really positive. You've
Yeah,
got
yeah,
to,
yeah.
even when it's really hard, because like you said, no one else is gonna champion you. Like your family might support you, but like we already spoke about, they might also be
Yeah.
quite worried. Like, what are you doing? Like, stability, job security, all that sort of stuff. You've got to have the belief that this is the right thing. And I think once you start making the steps along that road and you get those small wins, you get your invite to a first interview, somebody from like a business takes you seriously, has a phone call with you,
Yeah.
you have a conversation with someone and they're like, "Oh, you'd be really good in our team that's outside of teaching." Those are small wins, but they help massively give you that confidence boost. Like, yeah, I
Yeah.
can do this. But you only get those small wins if you start walking down that path. If you tell yourself that you can't do it, then you definitely can't do it. You
That's
know,
it. Yeah, yeah.
End of.
You know,
Yeah.
right now I'm actually just remembering one of my friends a long time ago, and I'm talking about like when I was in university. My friend was actually studying psychology, and then
Mm,
suddenly one time she just told me, you know, maybe if you want to be like, if you really think you are good, you really need to believe that you're good. If you want to do something, you gotta believe that you do it
mm.
and you do it good. It's like maybe you're not good, but if you believe you can do it, maybe that energy will just trespass and it will be like radiate that energy that you can actually do it.
Yeah. Yep.
Maybe something like it.
Yeah, and that definitely comes into like a job interview, because if you
Mm,
interview somebody and you're getting you get like a sense from the candidate that maybe they're a bit nervous or anxious, or that they feel like, oh, what am I doing here? A bit imposter syndrome.
yeah,
Then you as an employer who's like trying to hire someone, you're going to be like, I'm not sure about that guy. Like he didn't really feel like he didn't really believe in like what he didn't really believe what he was saying.
exactly. Yeah.
So it's got to come from that confidence. And sometimes people think confidence means like arrogance. They think like, oh, he's really
Oh,
confident, so therefore he's like really arrogant, he's always talking about himself. It's a completely different thing, because confidence comes from knowing your value and being able to demonstrate it and sort of prove it and say, here's what I've done and here's my background and my
this is
qualifications.
exactly
This is me. Someone who's arrogant is someone who walks around and talks about how amazing they are, and they've never done anything in their life. They, you know,
simple
they
as
just
that.
walk.
Yeah,
It's as simple as that. They've got no proof. They've got no credibility. You, as a teacher, have got years, probably maybe even decades of proof. You've got hundreds of people you've helped and worked with. They can all vouch for you. They can all say, "I know that guy. He was great. He was inspirational." Um, that's the difference between confidence and arrogance, and I think
exactly.
you can't get them confused.
Yeah.
You're not arrogant for knowing your value. You're
I'm
confident, and
yeah.
that's what people want.
I'm glad actually you said that. Clarify that because people actually don't get it. And yeah, that's true. Now, moving on to the segment 5. What's
Mm.
next? Mapping new career pathways for teachers. And this one, what are some career shifts you've seen that surprised you the most?
Mm. Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's so many different things that, having worked with so many different people, and you know, some people go and work for other companies. There's a lot of, if you really like education still, and maybe you're really passionate about education, but you don't want to be a teacher anymore. There's loads of other things you can do. You don't have to like completely leave the whole system. But you might want to not be teaching in front of a class of kids anymore, which is
Exactly.
absolutely fine. So, there's like what we call it ed tech or educational technology. There's all those companies
Yeah.
that sell things. There's online tutoring or in-person tutoring. You could carry on doing that. Tuition is massive now. And with things like Zoom, you can tutor all over the world. You can tutor like English, or you can tutor your subject. You can tutor anything that you want. It might
Yeah.
not even be something that you've taught in school. It might be that you're a really good cook. You're really good at baking. You're really
Your
good at
passion.
yeah, you're really good at art, whatever, music.
Yeah.
Sell your passion, monetize it. Those are still education, but it's not teaching. I think there's a big difference. Or it could be that you go into like content creation. Maybe you start you're doing things on like YouTube, or doing like like you are, like podcasts, like amazing,
Yeah.
like inspiring people. It's hard work, but it's really rewarding. And it's totally doable. I think once, if you say like, oh, that's not me, I can't do that, then you're never going to do it. But maybe you're really good at it and you just don't know yet. You might be amazing at it. You might have an audience that's crying out for it.
Exactly.
Um, Definitely. So there are those kind of businesses that are still in education, and then there's other things as well. Like you could work for, you know, um, in the UK, we have like lots of government jobs, to do with education, like working across schools, like traveling around schools and also like the national government. So
Like consultancy or something like that, right?
yeah, consultancy on what we call like school improvement and things like that.
Mm.
So, working to kind of improve schools and work with the leadership teams. Um, but then there's also like publishing, there's like textbooks, there's all sorts of stuff,
Writing.
that
Yeah,
writing and also going into schools and doing training for the staff, so like it could be training on all
exactly.
sorts of different things. It could be your subject, it could be like leadership, it could be coaching, whatever it happens to be. So done loads of work with people on those kind of things. And then the other kind of pathways, charity, loads of charity jobs, like especially in Europe, but I'm sure it's the case around the world as well. Loads of big international charities as well. They love having teachers because teachers are really good with people. They're really good with
Yeah.
like tight
Communicators,
budgets. Yeah, and
empathy.
empathy, good communication, social impact is massive. Like because you're used to making a difference, and that's what all charities are about making a
Yes,
difference. So. Then there's like there's corporate jobs, so it's often called like learning and development, where you're kind of doing
mm,
professional development, but for corporations, and you're in the like human resources team, the HR teams. I mean, those are just some of the jobs. I mean, but there's loads of things.
exactly.
People go into all sorts of things. Um, like I said before, I really like it when. I love it when people find a job that they really like. I also really love it when they start their own business, and I think that because that's the whole thing. They start it from scratch. It's their vision, it's their dream. They've
Exactly.
made it a reality, and it gives them all the things that they want, And yeah, it can be really hard, but it can be super rewarding as well. Like it can be, you can set your own hours. The sky's the limit in terms of your pay. If you can keep working hard at something, you can just get paid more and more and more. No one's going to tell you like, oh, that's it, you can't get paid anymore now.
Exactly.
Just
It's
which
true.
for teachers is really appealing. When you've been maybe at the top, like in the UK, once you've done about 10, 11 years of teaching, you're basically at the top of what we call like the pay scale. You can't get paid anymore. And that's it. And I'm sure it's the case in a lot of other places around the world. Like you just basically you get capped in terms of how much you can earn. It's like, well, this is the maximum you can get paid as a teacher.
Yeah.
So enjoy that for the rest of your life.
Jeez.
And lots of people get very frustrated by that, don't they? So,
No,
yeah,
of
definitely.
course. Jesus.
There's no
That's a lot.
motivation anymore. Like there's
No,
yeah,
no, no,
obviously there's
nothing.
you'd be motivated by the kids, but like you want to know that there's progress in your career and that you're earning more
Exactly.
money.
That's another part of you, you know? Yeah,
Yeah,
you need actually something here. Yeah, but you also need the complement of other things, you know? It's not, teacher is not only one thing. It's actually a mix of different things actually that we need in order to keep going.
yeah,
Otherwise,
yeah,
that's it. That's gonna be. So
yeah.
moving to the segment six, getting
Mm,
unstuck, tools, networks, and first step.
mm.
Now, how important is networking and what's one easy way to start?
Oh, and networking. I love networking. I mean, we wouldn't have met Mike if we weren't networking online.
Yeah,
For me, the most powerful tool is LinkedIn. If you're not on LinkedIn already, I absolutely love LinkedIn. I think it's an amazing resource. I think there's a billion users worldwide. You can connect with people all around the world really easily,
yeah,
and it's such a from my experience anyway, it's a really positive platform. Like it's full of people who want to learn from each other and you know
help.
uh, help each other, support each other, and also like champion each other. Like when you put up a post like I've got a new job, or people are like, yeah, good for you.
Yeah,
Like, and it
yeah, that's
feels
super
positive.
good.
It
Yes.
feels nice. Whereas like other platforms are
Oh
pretty like
no,
they
no,
can
no.
feel a bit more like hateful and
Yeah,
like
so
there's
much
a lot
hating
lot
right
of
now. Yeah,
trolls,
definitely.
a lot of
Bullying.
trolls, a lot of spam. Yeah,
Mm,
yeah. Um, so like LinkedIn is really powerful, and like I think what you can do on LinkedIn is you can start off by just like researching other people. Like so many people have like a really open profile where you can just look at their
mhm.
background and you can look at like what jobs have they done before and like they've got a little biography there. And like step one, you don't even need to talk to anyone. You can just look at people's profiles, what have they done? Where have they come from? Like, what did they do before they found that business or before
Exactly.
they started working? Like, that can be really inspirational because you can look through them and you might realize that actually quite a lot of these people used to be teachers, and then they've gone on to
Many.
do new things. Yeah, yeah.
No,
So I would
I
say
agree with you.
really
Yeah,
important.
LinkedIn.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I love it. It's great.
very positive, very positive actually platform. I never thought actually I was gonna find something like it because, as you know, most of the platforms right now are all about negativity. It's there always, all the time, or
Yeah.
certain like pretty bad information over there. Uh, People just caring only about the drama.
Mm. Mm.
As an example, the Kardashians. Everybody, I mean, if it's the Kardashian, everybody just go over there and start like listening to it or checking on it. That's it. But this platform over here is like really, I like it as well, as you said, because it's like more like for professionals or for people
Yeah.
who are actually looking for, I don't know, make a positive change in their life.
Yeah.
It's a really good one as well.
Yeah, and it's like I think the biggest difference between like TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and stuff like that is that they're there for entertainment. You know, they're there to like let you know you're there to like, which is great. Like we all need to switch off, but like you can just stand there and swipe through like a million videos and sit there until 3 in the morning
Yeah.
if you want to. But LinkedIn isn't like that. LinkedIn is it's a tool for talking to each other, learning about each other. It's not like all video content. It's reading, it's engaging, it's discussion, it's
Yes.
debate, but it's professional and it's informative. Um, and yes, it has its dark bits. You know, there are some comments and some posts that are a bit weird, and you might go like, "Oh, I don't agree with that." But there's only like 5% of that. The rest of
Yeah.
it, for me and my experience, it's been fantastic. So that would be like the biggest thing that I often recommend people to do is go on LinkedIn, explore it, talk to people, be open about what you're trying to do, have conversations, just see where it leads you. Like be curious about the future.
Yeah. I think LinkedIn should be sponsoring this episode actually. And we
Yeah,
should
if they
actually
if they
get
want to
some
get in
revenue
touch,
actually.
yeah. Yeah, that sounds great. Maybe we should send them a message. Yeah, that'd be
Why
good.
not?
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
That sounds really good there. So, when you were actually in this process, did you work with a coach or
Hmm.
join a community or use any specific resources? How do you do it? And this episode is sponsored by Classroom Exit Coach.
At Classroom Exit Coach, I help educators transition out of the classroom and into new, meaningful careers. This isn't just about changing jobs, it's about rediscovering your value and learning how to communicate it. Through personalised coaching, group workshops, and resources, I can support you with rebuilding your confidence, identifying and articulating your transferable skills, crafting a strong CV and cover letter that actually gets you noticed, optimizing your LinkedIn profile to attract new opportunities, and preparing you for interviews with confidence. If you're ready to explore what's next and learn how to position yourself for success, I'd love to help.
Yeah, so for me, I've always I think lots of people see asking for help as a bad thing because it means that you're like admitting that you don't know something. And in our society, that can be seen as quite a negative, like, oh, that guy doesn't know something. Oh, he's an idiot, like it,
Oh, yes.
or
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
and it's
yeah,
putting
yeah.
yourself out there. But actually, if somebody knows more than you shouldn't be afraid of that. You should talk to them. You know, that's what education is about. Like what would school be like if the kids were afraid of the teachers? It would be awful.
Oh, tell me
Um,
about it. Yeah.
yeah. So I've worked with all sorts of people. I've worked with I've had coaches myself, a business coach, like career coach, life coaching, therapy, like all of that stuff because it makes you a stronger person because you've got a better self-awareness of yourself. You know what makes you
Yes.
tick, you know your strengths, and so I know the things that I'm really good at. I know the things that I'm not so good at. I push the things that I'm not so good at to other people. And I only know that because, I know what I'm good at and I know the things that drag me down. Um, so I'd really recommend working with someone else. I think there's so many fantastic people out there. And again, come back to LinkedIn, there's loads of people on LinkedIn who are there to help each other. And just because somebody charges money or like you have to pay them, don't be put off by that. It often means that you're going to get a really good service. They know what they're doing. If they're making a
Exactly.
living from it and people trust them and people are paying them and that's their business, then listen to them.
Yeah.
They're helping people. Take shortcuts. It's basically like taking a shortcut. You could
Yeah.
figure it all out on your own, but it might take you years. It might take you a lifetime to figure it out on your own. Then it's too late. Take the shortcuts if you can.
And then is the problem, because actually regret is something, it's a terrible feeling. Regret.
Definitely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that I think that's something that we could just avoid that. And let's
Mm.
do it. Yeah, I'm really glad actually you're just motivating people just to go and do it because that's the point. Just go and do it. Not being afraid of, oh, you don't know so much, they're gonna think I'm pretty bad or I'm stupid because that's what they think. So, oh no, 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 no. I'm not gonna ask anything. That's it. I'm not gonna do it. Period. That's
Yeah.
it. But
Yeah.
no, I mean just go and do it. I think it's a really good one. It's quite the same way actually I did it. I
Mm.
didn't have a podcast. I didn't know actually how to start it. Just one day
Mm.
I woke up and I'm like, okay. I've noticed that actually Joe Rogan has like millions of plays per episode. The guy talks actually for 4 hours. And
Yeah.
anyway, 1 million plays per episode is like, wow. Okay, I just want to have 1,000.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So I was like, let's start doing it. And yeah, just like you said, LinkedIn, boom, start there, checking on profiles. And then suddenly I start meeting really great people. It's like, oh, great teachers over here, educators coming out. It's like, okay, this is what teaching is, giving advices, tips, and all that. Then I found you there, and it's like, okay,
Yeah.
what you need to do is just reach, send a message, and that's it. And start doing it. It won't actually
Yeah.
cost, it won't cost you anything. Just one message, 1 minute
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah. What's the worst that could happen? What's the worst that could happen? They might ignore your message, they might block you, they might say no thank you. But then who cares?
Exactly.
Because if
Definitely.
even if one person says yes, you've got one guest, you've got one starting point, you've got one podcast, and you build from there. But the hardest
Exactly.
thing you do is the first thing. Like when someone's starting their business, the hardest dollar or pound or whatever currency you want to use, euro, is the hardest one to make is the first one. The first dollar you make is your hardest dollar.
Is the
From
hardest.
then, you've got somebody who's given you money, who's convinced you, or you've convinced them to pay for something. You can get them to speak about your service. They convince others. It grows from there. But the hardest thing is the first thing.
Yeah.
And if you can get yourself over that hurdle, who knows what that's going to lead to. So whether that
Yeah.
hurdle is like simply from this podcast, you go and sign up to LinkedIn, you go and message some people, you go and research, you send someone, a message, you ask them, I'm interested in your job. How did you get it? If that's the first hurdle, great, you've done it. What
That's
next?
it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Exactly. Point.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it. You said it. Drop the mic. That's it. So let's move on to the segment 7 now. From passion to purpose. Reinventing life after teaching. Huh. So, how has your sense of purpose evolved since leaving the classroom?
Mm. I think when I first left the classroom, I was really worried that I wouldn't have very much of an impact. Like in school, I was a deputy head teacher, so 1,100 students, big impact. Every day I would speak to hundreds of people, hundreds of staff, teachers. I was worried that like my impact would be smaller, but actually, for me, like my impact is
Well,
huge now. I've got like a huge network of people on LinkedIn. And not only do I make an impact with individuals, but I get to make an impact with loads of people who listen to like podcasts like yourself, and I get to post things about educational reform and changes and like how the system's broken and here's what we can do to fix it. And some of my posts, I get literally hundreds of thousands of people looking at my content, which is amazing. So I guess for me, I was worried that
that's the
I would have
impact.
less of an impact, but I've got more of an impact. I've got 10 times the amount of impact that I used to have. And that's been incredible for me. Yeah.
And that's one of the things. I mean, that's the purpose again. How you actually do it, just creating that impact. That's the
Mm.
door. That's the door, opening doors over there. And
Yeah.
there's a lot actually things actually you can do there. Definitely. So now, what do you miss and what you do not miss about teaching?
Yeah. What don't I miss
Might
is
sound
easier.
might sound tricky. It might sound tricky, but
Yeah, I mean, I really don't miss the stress. I mean, honestly, the job was, it's hard to describe how stressful that job was. I mean,
mm,
it was all consuming. I couldn't switch off. I describe it as like, if you're on the internet and you've got like 1,000 tabs open, like you've got like 1,000 different windows open all at once. They're all going, and it's like slowing down the computer, and it's like that was like my brain in education because there were so many things happening all at once, and I couldn't switch off. I couldn't close them all. I didn't have any downtime. I was like working all the time, even when I wasn't working at a laptop or in school. My brain was still thinking about school and thinking about
Definitely.
education, and so I don't miss that at all because I think that
Mhm.
is no way to live. That is like that's survival, That's like you just
Point.
yeah, it's you're living to work. You're not working to live. Like if your life is work, what life
That's
is
it.
that?
Everything's wrong.
Yeah, you know, you've been institutionalized. You've been conned by the system. The system is you're a perfect employee, but you're destroying your life. You know.
Yes.
And if that's your choice and you know that you're doing that and you're very conscious of doing that and you're like,
Be
good for you,
happy.
fine. Like be happy in that.
Yeah.
But for me, I was sick of it and it was destroying me and my relationships and like I just what it done. So that I don't miss at all, for those obvious reasons. Um, the bits that I miss, I was a history teacher. I taught history for many years.
Ooh, nice.
I
I love that
I
subject.
yeah, it's a great subject, and I miss that subject knowledge because I don't get to use that as much in my current job. Like my knowledge of history, I trained, in university as a historian, and I love that side of things, and I don't get to use that as much anymore. Really, interesting knowledge of history. So that's probably something I miss is like being in the classroom with kids who want to learn history. They're excited by it. Maybe they want to go and do history themselves at university.
Yeah.
They're really, really engaged and passionate. That's the bit I miss. I miss that.
Mm.
Um, yeah, I don't get to do that as anymore. Maybe in the future, maybe I can do some sort of video series or
Why not?
online course, about that
Hey,
might
hey, that sounds
be a new
really good
business
there,
idea. Yeah. Yeah, and the only reason, and I can do that because I've got the belief that I can do it, you know.
Mm.
And other people will be sitting here going, I can never do that. Why not? Why not? If you love teaching maths or English or whatever, go
Just
for
go and
it.
do it.
Do it.
Yeah.
Start small. You'll be surprised.
Well, yeah, yeah, definitely. You are one of them. I'm one of them as well. I'm also surprised about this.
Mm,
So it is that's what happened, and I really like actually your story here, and I'm really glad actually I'm getting to know you a little bit more in this aspect because yes, you're not the only one, and talking about teachers all over the world, same going through the same situation. Yeah, they love what they do, but they're not getting rewarded. I mean, there's not
mm,
the salary part, which is actually something that it's really important here, but. Yeah, they love what they do. They can actually do it, and for sure they will be missing those type of things, those little things,
mm.
those little aspect. Sometimes maybe you will be hearing someone talking about, I don't know, some sort of event in history, and you will be like, "Hey, hold on, I know about that," and then you're gonna start running to join the conversation because you really like it and you really like actually to talk to them about it. It happens. It happened to me.
Yeah,
So I hear
yeah,
someone talking about, hold on a second, multilingualism. I know about it. Hold on. I would like to share some.
yeah,
So
yeah.
it happens like that, and but it's better to make a move instead of like getting stuck there.
Yeah, because if you compare those two things I just said, like I miss like one tiny aspect of the job, but the bit that I don't miss was something that was dominating my life. So the trade-off, yes, there's something I miss. Of course there is. I'd be silly to say I don't miss anything. I don't miss, that would be like naive and a bit like, silly to say
Yeah.
that. Of course there's going to be things that you will miss if you leave teaching. But the bits that I don't miss, that's great to be able to walk away from all that,
Yeah.
and have a new life that feels like when I look back at, when I was in school, it feels in the same way. It feels like it was yesterday, but it also feels like it was a lifetime ago, and it's
Yeah.
really weird feeling because it feels like I'm a different person.
Mixed
Yeah,
feelings there. Mm.
yeah, really mixed feelings. It's a strange one, but exciting. Life is about change. Life shouldn't be you
Yes.
shouldn't be stood still. Don't let life happen around you. It's your life. Be in control of it.
Totally agree about it. It's just like a computer, I would say. You were actually mentioning about all the tabs all open. I'm like,
Mm,
okay, maybe this is just like back in the 90s when we used to have actually Windows 98. You got a lot of tabs, and then suddenly everything goes slower, 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 slow down, slow down. That's it. You
yeah.
gotta get a new computer. Now we got different type of computers, a lot faster. So what are you gonna do? You're gonna keep that computer, you wanna get another one. I think it's
Mm,
quite comparable to the same situation.
yeah. And there's only so much your brain can take, and
Mm,
teaching pushes it to the limit. There's just too much information, too many
yeah,
competing pressures. You're not being paid enough, you're undervalued, you're overworked. Like it's just you're pushing, if you compare yourself to a machine, you're pushing the machine to its absolute breaking point.
yeah,
And at some point it will break. And it's just about that sort of self-awareness of like when is enough for you, you
yeah,
know, and maybe you can hold on and maybe you can make it work and if you can, good for you. I'm not about if you love teaching and you want to stay in it, great, good for you. Like that's not that like
yeah.
I have no problem with that whatsoever. Like, but if you're someone who's thinking maybe it's time for me to leave, then let's have a chat.
So about this one, if you could whisper something to every teacher standing at the edge of this decision, what would you say?
I think it comes back to it's a bit of a cliche, but just believe in yourself.
Hmm.
Like just believe in yourself. Like we said earlier in this conversation, you've got to make that belief happen because other people will believe it if you believe it. And it comes from confidence, and that confidence comes from knowing your value, knowing your skills, knowing your background, being able to prove it, be credible, be
Yeah.
authentic. It's not arrogant, it's confidence. Confidence comes into, that whole idea of, yeah,
Yes.
believe in yourself because you're confident in yourself. And I know that's really difficult. If you're in a place where you're like really stressed and you hate your job, I know how hard that is. I'm not naive. I'm not trying to patronize you. I'm not trying to talk
Yeah.
down to you and say, "Oh, just believe in yourself is easy." It's not
That's
easy.
it.
It's really
No.
hard. It's really hard to do it. But um that's the thing that works the most. If you can believe in yourself, then you can convince someone else to believe in you, then they might give you a job, you
Yeah.
know. Um
Motivate yourself. Motivate yourself.
Motivation. Yeah.
Be that person. Be that superhero. I
Yeah.
always actually told. I was actually talking to another teacher, Chilean teacher, and we were like, yeah, we're like superheroes.
Mm.
We got a
Yeah.
superhero inside, and yeah, we got many good things actually inside of us. Because empathy is one of them. Let's use it with ourselves,
Mm.
Be-
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think like that as well. So what's next for you, Mike?
Next for me. Well, that's a good question. I mean, I'm loving the job that I do. I love the business that I run. It genuinely excites me. I love helping people. I love meeting people. I love connecting with people all around the world. I think the biggest thing for me now is working on growing this business, helping more and more people. What I'd love to start doing is also working. So I work with a lot of people leaving education, and I know the reasons why they're leaving. I know again and again and again they tell me the same sort of stories. What I want to start doing more of is working with the schools and the organizations and the governments to say, here's what you can do to change the system. Like it's in a crisis. Only you can fix it. Only you've got the resources, but you need to know that the people on the ground, on the front line, are done. And here's the
Yeah,
changes that you can make. So for me, I'd love to start doing more of that work, having a bigger impact again, working with those organizations, those schools, those school, whether yeah, and just really helping them to sort of to change it so that the people who stay in education have a better quality of life. It's ambitious,
amazing.
but we'll see.
It's ambitious, but it's really positive. It's something that
Mm.
it really feels me like, wow, it's something really cool actually to find someone doing the job that you're doing. Because a
Oh,
job
thank
that
you.
you're doing, it's something that I really uh I'm not actually receiving this help from you, but
Mm.
I can actually feel it from other teachers. It's like
Yeah.
I've seen so many teachers actually in this situation, they don't know actually what to do. But then
Mm.
suddenly it's like look, seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
there's hope here. We got another teacher who was in the same situation and he can actually help.
Yeah.
This is something
Yeah.
that I really actually encourage everyone to do it, step up, go ahead. And here we have Mike. You are the one who can actually help a lot. And I will be keeping actually checking on your LinkedIn, your post. I really like them. I share them. I think they're really important. So I'm gonna actually just put your LinkedIn account here in the comments, in the captions of the video, and on Spotify, so people can just go and visit. Because I think this is the type of help teachers need.
Mm. Yeah, no, absolutely. That sounds brilliant. And anyone who's listening to this that wants to connect or have a chat or just reach out, please do. You know, I'm on LinkedIn, and yeah, that's my whole thing is about helping you figure out what's best for you. You know, I don't push you in any direction. My goal is whatever your goal is, and you might not know what your goal is yet, but that's fine. We're going to figure it out together.
Amazing. Well, Mike, thank you very much. It's been a real pleasure actually to talk to you and hearing all what you're saying and finding people like you. That's something that really makes me feel that I'm actually in the right path as well. So thank you very much, Mike. I don't know, a few words actually for the listeners, and you tell me, tell us.
Yeah, no, it's been wonderful to have this conversation, Mike. It's really, you know, I think what you're doing, bringing educators onto your platform, getting them to talk about different perspectives, and really having that global audience, I think is amazing. You know, connect. We spoke a lot today about kind of things that are happening all across the world, you know, and I think bringing that together and sort of sharing those stories and those struggles, I think your podcast is wonderful. I think the work you're doing is great, and I, you know, I wish you the best of luck, and thank you again for inviting me on. It's been wonderful to be here. So yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Thank you very much, Mike. So, well, the doors are open. Any other time that you would like to come and talk, definitely will be amazing.
Sounds good.
All right, then. Thank you, Mike, and see you next time.
No worries. Thanks, Mike.
You've just heard part two of our Heart to Heart with Mike Leaman. And if you're still listening, I know one thing about you. You care deeply about your impact. But more than that, you're ready to honor your growth. We've talked about letting go, reclaiming power, and finding joy again. Not just in work, but in life. Whether your next step is already in motion or still a silent whisper, know this: there is life after the classroom, and it can be beautiful. Thank you for being here, for listening with an open heart, and for dreaming a little bigger with us. Until next time, keep teaching, keep learning, and above all, keep evolving.